Hello everyone, welcome to this series on the history of English literature. And in this video, we are going to discuss the development of poetry in the Elizabethan period. Introduction. The Elizabethan period was marked by a significant transformation and flourishing of English poetry. This video explores the various forms of poetry prevalent during this era, including dramatic poetry, lyrical poetry, descriptive and narrative poetry, and religious, satirical, and didactic poetry. Each form reflects the diverse spirit and cultural dynamism of the age. Dramatic poetry. The rise of blank verse. The exuberant and adventurous spirit of the Renaissance was vividly reflected in its dramatic poetry. While the heroic couplet was occasionally used, such as by Shakespeare in A Midsummer Night's Dream, blank verse gained ascendancy and became the dominant form. The evolution from the stiff and stopped verse of Gorboduc 1562 to the varied and flexible blank verse of Shakespeare was remarkably rapid. Pioneers of dramatic poetry. By 1590, George Peele showcased more variety, ease, and fluency in blank verse, while Christopher Marlowe by 1592 had established it as the supreme medium for drama. Marlowe's blank verse was noted for its energy, resonance, and sensitivity to emotion, making it the first truly great dramatic English verse. Shakespeare's mastery. Shakespeare used blank verse with unparalleled range and power, achieving a flexibility that allowed the meter to be completely subdued to his will. His work represented by zenith of dramatic poetry, achieving a level of excellence less than 50 years after Gorboduc. Decline after Shakespeare. Following Shakespeare, dramatic poetry saw a decline. While Beaumont and Fletcher maintained a striking lucidity and simplicity of style, they lagged Shakespeare's greatness. The deterioration continued with Marston's ranting and Decker's sprawling verse. Only John Webster, among the post-Shakespearean dramatists, ever approached the greatest heights, although his verse was often faulty. This decline was also marked by a growing proportion of prose in drama. Lyrical poetry. The lyrical mood. The Elizabethan age was well suited to the lyrical mood, resulting in an abundance of lyrical poetry. It began with the early works of Wyatt and Surrey, published in 1557, continued through the dramas of the period, as appeared in numerous miscellanies. The lyrical impulse carried on through the melodies of Campion and the darker moods of Donne. The sonnet. An interesting subspecies of the lyric is sonnet, which flourished in both its Italian or Petrarchan and English or Shakespearean forms. Wyatt introduced the Italian form and Surrey introduced the English form. Notable collections include Sidney's Astrophel and Stella, published in 1591, Spenser's Amoretti, published in 1595, and Shakespeare's Sonnets, and Daniel's Delia, published in 1592. Though less popular later in the period, Drayton produced at least one sonnet of great power. Descriptive and narrative poetry. Early works. Descriptive and narrative poetry began with works such as Sackville's Introduction to My Rule for Magistrates 1563 and continued with Marlowe's Hero and Leander, published in 1598, and Shakespeare's Venus and Adonis 1593 and The Rape of Lucrece 1594. Culmination and decline. This form culminated in the allegorical poetry of Spenser and began to decline with the works of Fletcher's and Drayton's Endymion and Phoebe 1595. The pastoral, a kind of descriptive poem, was seen in Spenser's Shepherd's Calendar 1579, Brown's Britannia Pastorals 1613 and works by Drayton. Notable works. Drayton's Polyolbion 1612 is an example of almost purely descriptive poetry, while his England's Heroical Epistles 1597 represent a more narrative type. These poems are distinguished by strong descriptive power, freshness of fancy, and sometimes positive genius of style. Satirical poetry. Satirical poetry, though strong in intent, did not produce great poetry during this period. Early examples include Gascoigne's Steel Glass 1576, followed by Donne's Satires 1590 to 1600 and Hall's Satires in 1597. Religious poetry. Religious poetry includes Drayton's The Harmony of the Church 1591, several poems by Donne, and many works by Jesuit poet Robert Southwell 1561 to 95. Conclusion. The Elizabethan period was a time of remarkable growth and diversity in English poetry. From the dramatic and lyrical to the descriptive and satirical, the poetry of this era reflects the adventurous and dynamic spirit of the age. So this was the discussion on the development of poetry in the Elizabethan period. We will meet in the next video and discuss some other topic. Until then, goodbye and thank you.